So I woke up one morning and I saw I had a Facebook message from a woman named Heather, and it said, "I know you've been told stuff, but I swear to you, I am your sister. Your dad and my mom were young and dumb, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be sisters. You and my daughter Kate look so much alike, and I know I gotta look a lot like our dad." I was shocked when I heard this message. I hadn't been told stuff. I kept rereading the message over and over again, trying to decide if it was a scam or not. And then I thought, did my dad cheat on my mom? Did he have another family with somebody else? I thought that wasn't probable because he barely ever leaves the house, but you never know. I thought I had to find out some more information about Heather. So I clicked on her Facebook profile page and started scrolling through her pictures to see if she even looked like us, and she kind of did look like us, so I'm like, maybe she is my sister. And then I scrolled down to her demographics, and it said from Newark, New Jersey. And I'm like, that's the town my dad is from. She really could be my sister. And then it said age 49 years old, and I thought, the math is mathing, and she would have been born when my dad was a teenager, and if he were to have another kid, that would probably be the most likely time. I sighed a sigh of relief because I realized that my dad probably didn't cheat on my mom because that would have been before they met. I thought, before I bombard my parents with this new tidbit of information I just got, I decided to reach out to Heather. So I go to my computer and I message her back and I said, "Hi Heather, thanks for reaching out. How do you know this? Did my mom and your dad date?" And I sent that off, and a few minutes later, she responds back to me. And she said they did date when they lived in Vailsburg in Newark when they were teenagers. It was hard feeling left out and not loved. I felt such sadness for her when I read this, but then I felt this excitement, like I might be getting this new sister. That would be so cool. And I was like, when I got this message, it hit me at an interesting time in my life. I was feeling a little bit of emptiness because my parents, they owned their own business and worked 7 days a week most of my life, and they were also raising my little brother, who was 10 years younger than me. And we didn't have much time for new memories, experiences, adventures, and I always craved that growing up. And I always thought that my brother and I would have that when he got older, and we would have those experiences together. Unfortunately, when he was 7 and I was 18, he ended up getting sick, and he passed away a few years later. And the dream of having that relationship with him kind of vanished after that. My parents went more into their shell and their rigid routines, and I always felt like that sense of emptiness after that. And I was like, well, maybe Heather could be this person for me now. And I got really excited about it, and I was like, well, before I get too excited, I have to reach out to my dad and see what his side of the story was. So I called my dad, and I said, "Hi, Dad, someone named Heather reached out to me." He's like, "Oh, Heather, haven't heard that name in a while." I was like, "Do you know her?" And he's like, "Well, her mother and I used to hang out when we were teenagers. She ended up getting pregnant and said I was the father, but when I asked for a DNA test, she disappeared." I was like, "Dad, you almost had this other child and you didn't know if you had one or not for 49 years? That's crazy. Why did you never tell me about this?" He's like, "Well, I thought Mom told you." And I said goodbye to my dad, and I gave him a big eye roll for that last comment to me. And then I called him back a few hours later, and I asked him if he'd be okay with me getting to know Heather and continuing to talk to her. And he said he'd be okay with it, but he would prefer if we got a DNA test, because he wasn't sure if she was actually his daughter or not. So I said, okay, I'll ask her. So I messaged Heather and I asked her if she'd be okay with getting a DNA test, and she said yes. So I did 23andMe a few years ago, so I asked her if she would do that one, and she said yes. So we ordered the test kit for both Heather and my dad, and they sent their DNA back to the lab, and the lab got their DNA, and they were like, it's going to be a 4-week wait for the results. And I was like, oh, a 4-week wait? That's so long. And so, but nonetheless, the days start going by, and I had all these emotions. on the one hand, I was like, if I have this new sister, that would be so cool. We would make all these memories together and have new experiences and interesting conversations, and I would get to meet all her kids and her family members. It would be so cool. And on the other hand, if she wasn't my sister, I would go back to that empty feeling I was feeling before. Heather and I were like talking back and forth throughout these days, and I was always like, should I continue talking to her? Should I not? I didn't want to get too attached, but we continued talking because it just felt right. And the 4 weeks finally goes by, and it's the day the test results are supposed to come back. And I'm waiting all day long, like refreshing 23andMe the entire time, couldn't focus on anything else the whole day. And 11 p.m. rolls around, and it's time for the test result. And I get a notification from 23andMe saying you have new DNA relatives. And I rushed to my computer, and I looked at the results, and it said, your father, William Condit, is 49.93% related to you. And nobody else's name was there. And I was like, I panicked for a minute, and I was like, well, maybe Heather's results didn't come back yet, and she will message me the good news in the morning. So I go to sleep, and I wake up the next morning, and I see a message from Heather. And it said, I'm sorry I put you guys through this, but your dad isn't my dad, and we're not sisters, and my mom lied to me my whole life. Immediately I felt crushed, like this new sister who I thought I had was now not my sister. And I sulked for a few days, and I really reflected on the whole situation that happened. And I realized I had parents who loved me my whole life, something Heather really wished she had. And I realized Heather wasn't going to be the answer to the relationship I wished I had with my brother, or the experiences I wished I had with my family. And I had to look inward and empower myself. So since then, I've been doing just that, and I've gone full force into my physical and mental health in the gym and therapy, and filling my life up with new classes and experiences, and I even did a cross-continent trip to the Galapagos Islands. So although Heather didn't end up being my sister, she unknowingly helped me realize that although I'll probably always feel the emptiness of losing a sibling, I can fill my life up with gratitude for my loved ones, a life filled with passion and adventure, and a newfound self-empowerment to help me take on my future challenges.